What's up, you guys? Happy Wednesday. How are you? We are somehow a couple minutes late. You guys ever have those time warps where you're like, hey, we're good, and then all of a sudden you're like, where did the time go? Brandon's still looking at questions.
Hi, people in here.
How are you guys today? So, welcome to the weekly live show. If you're new to the group, my name is Courtney Miracle. This is my husband, Brandon Miracle. So our goal in this every week in the show is to answer your questions, to share some things that we've been seeing. Hi, Rebecca. With our current clients and things that have been showing up, and really just serve you. So if you have questions, drop them in the feed. We're happy to answer them. If you're watching the replay, write replay for us. And again, if you have questions even in the replay, put the questions there. And if you have questions that show up during the week, the way that this group is intended to work is do hashtag question and then post your question and we will answer it, okay?
Hash brown cake,
You got to say it out loud if we're going to do it. All right, guys. Go ahead, honey. Tell them your joke.
We're good.
No, tell them your joke.
What do you call a hash brown chasing another hash brown?
Hashtag. It's Brandon's long-going joke. It's been like, I don't know, 10 years of that.
And it's still a hit.
And it's still a hit. If you're not a dad joke fan, then you should not hang around Brandon often because there are a lot of those. Okay, you guys. So a couple of housekeeping items. So a lot of you guys know that our next 8-week shift starts this coming Monday. So spaces are filling up and time is running out. So not to get you in a hustle, but like time is really running out. So if you want to join us for that or you have questions, let us know. I've had a few people that have had some questions. If you guys want to jump on a 15-minute phone call just to talk and like not have to text, just let me know and I'm happy to get on a call with you. We did some free coaching calls this week, which is super fun. So that's something we're going to do more of. But, what you're going to find inside that 8-week program really, you guys, is understanding nutrition, understanding your emotions, right? We have 4 pillars, so physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. We're going to dive into a lot of this today, but it's really going to teach you how to shift your relationship with food. Weight loss can totally be a part of this. That's absolutely, that can be a part of it, but we really want you to understand why you're doing what you're doing, how stuff actually works in your body. So it's not just, hey, give me a diet plan and let me run with it. And then 6 weeks from now, I'm frustrated and I'm annoyed and I can't stick with it, right? So our goal is really long-term success to shift your body, shift your mind, understand yourself, and truly just be like the happiest, healthiest version of yourself. So it's done in a group. You can add one-to-one coaching, but it's a massively supportive community. You get accountability partners and you get coaching, right? Hi, Kat. And really, you guys, the coaching is the biggest piece of without a coach, most people will, I don't want to say fail, but where we all have those things where you're like, God, if I could just ask somebody a question, if I only knew why this was happening, or we come up into a little roadblock. Like when you have the coaching and you have the community, those roadblocks just become little speed bumps. Have you guys in your town, like ours are now speed humps, which I think is the weirdest thing, but anyway. So like the roadblocks become the little bumps and you move on and you continue to grow and be successful. So we'll drop the link in there, but please let us know if you have questions, and we'd love to have you join us.
Well, I think ultimately, you guys, it's our goal. Honestly, and there's many reasons why we started this program, but more importantly is to really help everyone that's in here understand that most of you guys are working 8 to 10 hours and you're getting like 4 hours of pay, right? Like you're working your tails off, you're trying everything, you're calculating everything, you're counting everything, you're working out to nauseam, you're doing all these things, but you're getting like a quarter, if that, of the results that you're wanting. Mm-hmm. And our goal on this, you guys, is to help troubleshoot a lot of those things and flip that. We want you to get 8 hours of benefit or pay in 4 hours of time, right? Like it's to be able to get back your life, be able to get back that time frame, get back into the elements of not just restrictive eating, but more importantly, the elements of restrictive living, right? I mean, really, like if you're restrictive in one area, I can tell you from my own experience, you're restrictive in other areas of your life. You don't see life the same. You don't experience life the same. You don't do these kind of things. And so we want to open the doors for you guys to give you the tools to make really the process simple, but yet again, the dirty word in this is enjoyable, right? Because unfortunately for so many of y'all, we've had conversations, Courtney's had quite a few conversations this week, and tell me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them reciprocate the same thing of, I don't know why I'm trying so hard, but I'm not getting the results that I want, and I'm just frustrated, I'm upset, and all these things that we compile on top of ourselves. Our job is to help you remove those things and get you to see that you can do and accomplish anything you want. And usually it's a lot more simple than what you've been sold.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and so hi Katie, hi Erica, hi Kat. So I mean, you guys, I think the thing is, like Brandon just said, is it's like it's flipping the switch, right? Like dieting is lack, right? Nourishment is expansion. Like how do you shift all of the energies? And that can sound kind of woo woo, but like when you're living in a place of like all I think about is dieting, all you're attracting to yourself is dieting, right? When you're living in a place of lack and frustration, and like think about this: if I chase something, what's going to happen?
It runs.
It runs, right? And so if you're chasing something, where's it going to go? It goes away from you, right? Versus if you expand and you're like, hey, life is easy, my body is amazing, I feel great, right? Like the thoughts become things, right? And it's not that we just have thoughts and we don't take action, but when you have the thoughts that lead you into the place and the feeling you desire, you take inspired action, right? And inspired action, I heard this yesterday and it really just kind of struck me of I'm a big fan of inspired action and getting out of hustle because we lived in that for a very long time. But inspired action is taking action in which you're willing to receive. Okay? So think about that for a second. You're like, wait, what? So if you think about like you ask for something, right? Oh, I really want to change my relationship with food. I want to find the right diet. I want to do all the things. You have to be able to receive the message. What if, just what if, being in this group is the message? And then you're like, no, I don't want to listen to those people, right? Like you have to be willing to receive, right? And to receive often, it's expanding the way we look and think about things, because doing what you've always done is the definition of insanity, right? And so if you're like, but I'm doing these things and I keep doing these, I'm going to do them harder because it's not working because I'm going to run faster after that rabbit. Well, the rabbit's going to run faster, right? Versus what if I got to look differently? What if I got to be open to different ideas? What if I got to think about things that make maybe not a lot of sense to me right now, and understand that just might be, and we're here to tell you it is, the missing link, right? And so if you've been asking for a change, you've been asking to shift your relationship, you've been asking for something in your life, for physically, mentally, emotionally to change, take a look at what we're doing. Take a look at, like, honestly, you guys, go watch the testimonials, go read those things, because those are people that just had a little bit of faith and said, I want to do this, and have come in and gone, this is so much more than I thought it could be, because they chose to expand, right? And they chose to take that leap of faith, and they chose to do something different. So just want to think about, like, if you're in a place where you're asking for life to change, you've got to be willing to receive the messages, and maybe it's not us, like, I don't care if it's us, but like, be willing to receive the messages that show you how you can shift your life so that you're not always doing what you've always done.
Well, I think that ties in a lot to the first topic or first essential questions we received a lot this week was essentially motivation, right? I think a lot of you guys that are, OTF members and, you're going through the challenge and everything else. I think you guys are in week 5 or 6. You're coming up to the tail end of the challenge. And you're starting to feel that lack of motivation. You're starting to see, because we've seen this a million times. I mean, for a lot of you guys, I don't have to meet you, but I can tell exactly where probably you are in your journey. Is you started 5 or 6 weeks ago. You were super amped up. This is going to be the thing that was going to change your life. You were super motivated. You had all the mumbo jumbo tied into that. And 5 or 6 weeks later, you're starting to get burnt out. You're starting to get overwhelmed. You're starting to see old habits and patterns start to come back in your life. And you're starting to see old stories start to resonate back through. And you don't know how to tackle those or adjust around those, and then all of a sudden you're starting to fall back into the same old story of this thing isn't going to work, I can't sustain this, it's not going to happen, right? Or I don't have willpower, I don't want to go to the gym today, I'm overwhelmed, I haven't been doing this well enough. All the things we've seen in 20 years of coaching, and I hate to tell you, as much as you are unique, you're still a human being. We all have our patterns. Right, and what we want to tackle on that today, you guys, is helping you understand, is because yet again, a lot of the mumbo jumbo and a lot of the salesy slang things they get thrown around of like, you got to push, you got to drive, you got to be determined, you got to do all the other headline slogans, right? It's kind of like the same thing Courtney was talking about. If you try to push, the thing you're chasing runs away even faster, right? Like if Courtney was going to shove me, she might want to do that anyway. If she shoved me, what do I have to do in order to make sure I don't fall over? I have to push back, right? It's physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's the same thing when it comes to the things you're trying to aspire towards. Is if I'm going to push and drive and all these things that are going to come through, it's going to push back. Like one of Courtney's sayings that I love is, what is it? Like, fear pushes you until...
Oh, yeah. So fear pushes you until vision pulls you, right? It's a different... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. But it's a different... Yet again, it's a different sense. The outcome could be the same that you're trying to move towards. But intention and the actions behind it, two completely different things, right? Like, I mean, we had a long, like if you look on one of the feeds lower in this group, I had a very long conversation with one of the members asking the question because she's feeling that restriction of motivation happening for her. And so we went through a lot of the clarifying questions. We go through a lot of the identification questions, a lot of the things that for most of us is like, oh, I want this thing. Well, okay, that's great. I'm not going to discredit, I'm not going to do those things, but why do you want that thing? What does that thing mean to you? What is the obstacles that are going to come up? Wait, what has come up for you before? Because this is probably not something that just came out of nowhere that all of a sudden you want, right? Like for most of us, we get taught the like SMART method, right? Like specific, measurable, actionable, time sensitive, all the other things. And not to say that method can't be useful, but yet again, it's the same as food. Food in its essence, yet again, I would imagine if you asked most of the shifters that have gone through the group, they'll tell you what we do is not complex when it comes to food. It works really, really, really well. And we'll get into more of the specifications as to why we do it the way we do, but it's really pretty simple. It's not always easy because life comes about, you got your patterns, you got things that mean to you, but more importantly is when it comes to motivation, what is motivation? It's a state, right? Like all it is a state, right? Like it's kind of like we expect that it's got to be this rah, halftime, rocky montage speech leading into like this grand finale or whatever it may be. But all it is a state, right? Like it's feeling a sense of empowerment, feeling enthusiastic, feeling whatever term you want to put to there. But it's also in the sense of like if you're feeling a lack of motivation, and I'm not going to tell you, we've been doing this a very long time. We are on a very big mission to change and make an impact on this world. But there's still days we wake up and like, man, I'm tired. Our kids are all over the place. We got a tournament this weekend. We got all these kind of things. I don't feel that internal flame today that's just like get out there, take names, and kick ass. Sorry about their language, but like those days don't always come, right? But it's being able to see, okay, what is it that you want? But also, why is it so valuable and so important that you accomplish that? Because the mission that we're on is bigger than us. Right? Like it's an intrinsic driving factor of we want to be able to share and express and contribute to you guys, but it's also an extrinsic element of like we want to be able to have that ripple effect down the road. But for so many of y'all, what we tend to see, and yet again, you had a lot of conversations with a lot of folks this week, is so often we make these goals based off of external influencers, right? Of like, I want to lose weight because I want, my neighbor to look at me. Or I want my husband or whoever to have more connection with me. I want, to get a six pack because I want to whatever, right? And I'm not going to say that those things are bad, but oftentimes that doesn't tell you what else you're going to get, right? We make these goals, we make these things that we want to move towards so fixated on the things that we got to cut out that we don't really understand what we're going to get into that. And if you're focused on what you're going to lose, you're going to do it for a short amount of time and you're going to go back to the things that you know that are secure because all you're doing is focusing on the things you're losing, not the things in which you're gaining.
Well, and you're going to continue to be in that energy. Like if all you focus on is like, I need to lose weight, I need to lose weight, I need to lose weight. The universe gives you back what you think and how you act. So if you say, I need to lose weight, it's like, cool, that's your goal. I'm going to keep giving you the energy that you need to lose weight, right? And I want to speak to this when it comes to like the six pack. Because I know for a lot of us, it's like, well, if I have a six pack, whatever that means, right? I chased a six pack for a long time. And ironically, I had one and I literally couldn't see it. Like I took a picture the day I got pregnant. And like, well, I was like 9 months pregnant. I have to look back at that picture because it was like comparing. And I'm like, holy crap, why didn't I see that? Well, I didn't see it because I thought the six pack, and it took me a while to unpack this. And this is what I would say to you guys is like, if you want to lose weight, why? And then ask again why. And then ask again why. And then ask again why. And then like 5, 6, 7 times, you're going to find your actual why, right? And for me, it was like, when I started to unpack that, it was like, well, if I have the perfect body, then I'm going to have confidence. And if I have confidence, then I'm going to feel worthy. And if I feel worthy, then I can, and it was like, okay, well, that didn't make any sense. But again, when Brandon talked about the external and the internal, when you guys can understand, and I walked through this where it was like, okay, well, what I really desire is confidence and happiness and light and love and joy, I can do all of those things with or without a six pack, right? Like you can choose that. anytime you want. We're going through this with our oldest daughter right now. She tends to go into like what she doesn't want. And we're like, choose what you desire. I can choose to be happy, right? I can choose to do meditation. I can choose to focus on what I want. I can choose to turn off the media. I can choose to let people in my life that make me happy. I can choose to go outside. I can choose to do the things that make me happy. And when you do that, the external will follow, because all of a sudden that's not your focus, right? Like we've had athletes that come into our gym, like I couldn't lose weight. We have a specific, really, really good friend of ours now, of like, I've tried forever to lose weight. I've done all of the things. He came into our gym, this was 12 years ago, and I simply said, like, what if we focus on being an athlete? And he was like, what? I'm not an athlete. What are you talking about? I'm not an athlete, right? He's, he was in his 50s at the time. He was a doctor. Like, he's like, what are you talking about? But you know what he did? He took that and he's like, I'm going to focus on being an athlete. And you know what happened? A year later, he lost 80 pounds, right? Like, yes, he shifted some of his nutrition, but it was that he shifted the goal from like, I'm trying to lose weight. I can't lose weight. This isn't working, to like, wow, what can my body do? How can I feel in this, right? He felt strong and he felt powerful and he felt excited and he was learning new things. Like, that is motivation. And to me, like, I had a coach, I'm in a coaching group with, high level coaches. And our coach said to us, like, somebody said, like, how do you stay motivated? And my coach is very honest. And he's like, if you have to convince yourself to get motivated, you're not really connected to the desire or the dream, right? And for me, that's where that vision comes in of like, if you want to be athletic and happy and joyful and all of those things, then you act as it. You act that way. Be that person. And those things are going to come, right? And I will say, like, looking back when this was a big shift, and I invite you to look at this, is like, why are you doing what you're doing? For a very long time, everything I did was so that I didn't hate my body. Literally. I'm going to go walk on this stupid stair stepper for an hour so I don't hate my body. I'm going to eat this diet food so I don't hate my body. Well, coming from an energy of not hating myself, what do you think I got? More hating myself, right? And I hated what I was having to do. I didn't want to walk on that stupid stair stepper. But when I shifted from A, what can my body do? And B, if I want to love myself and love my body, because I had a very disconnected relationship with my body, how would I act? And I was like, well, what would I do? I would sleep, I would meditate, I would get rest, I would listen to my body. That was a big thing for me of like, if I felt wrecked and exhausted and all of those things, instead of forcing myself to go to the gym and being like, I'm going to do the thing, which I did for like 25 years of my life, you guys, I was like, what if I actually rested? What if I actually let myself recover? What if I loved my, like, how would you show up if you loved yourself, right? If it was your kid and they were telling you these things, would you do the same thing, right? So when you can make these shifts, the motivation is no longer a thing. And on the days where it ebbs and flows, you're just like, this is just life and it's okay. And I'm not a bad person or an unworthy person or an unmotivated person. It's just, this is life and that gets to be okay. And so I really think, find that vision, act from that vision. And if you don't know the vision, ask yourself 7 different times, right? And I will tell you, for almost everyone we've ever worked with, is I want to feel more love. I want to feel more confident. I want to be happier, right? That has nothing to do with what your external body looks like. So just figure out a way, slow down, get quiet, to like harness those emotions and think thoughts that make you happy and joyful and connected. And all of a sudden that stuff will just change.
Well, I think on the side of, yes, there's the thought process, but you can't just sit down in your yard and start spouting out there's no weeds in my yard without actually doing any work, right? Like there has to be actionable things put into place, right? But there's also the sense of, if you feel like, because this thing that we hear all the time is, yet again, if I feel like I don't have any willpower, I feel like I always hit the reset button, I feel like I'm always yo-yoing, I feel like I'm always self-sabotaging, is okay. So say, for instance, you are clear, okay? You're vividly clear on what it is you want, okay? And what I mean by vividly clear is specifically, what do you want? Because really what Courtney was just saying is she had to ask herself a different question, right? Like she started asking herself a different question. What can my body do? How can I appreciate my body? How much of a badass can I be? Not, why won't my body elicit the result I want? Why is my body so fat? Why is my body not responding the way I want it to? Why can't I fit into these jeans? Because your brain operates in the mechanism in which its job is to find the answer to the questions you continue to ask, because you're deeming it important. Because we inherently don't like to be wrong, right? Like I love to learn, but I also don't like to necessarily be wrong, especially when I'm posing a question to myself. And so when I'm posing essentially disempowering questions, I'm going to get disempowering answers. So essentially what Court did there is she started asking, different questions and more empowering questions that allowed her to feel empowered, because if you feel empowered, you're probably going to be more in line and more inclined to go do the things. Because if you're disempowered and you always are just running on the hamster wheel and you feel like you're going nowhere fast, what's the likelihood that you're going to continue down that path, right? But also
that's where it comes into inspired action, right? Versus the hustle. Like the hustle is disempowered action, and inspired action is you're acting because you're excited about the thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, no, but I think in addition to that is, if you're not, okay, so say you have all the specifications, right? You're specific on what you want. What's the vision that you want to get at the end of this road, even though that's not the end of the road, right? Like, okay, why is it so important for you? And I think that's the biggest thing, is because obstacles along the way are going to be inevitable no matter what you do. Right? Like, it's not going to be a linear path. It's going to have ups and downs and valleys and all between. And your why is going to allow you to pull yourself through those times of restriction. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's not just what the hell do you want, but why is it so massively important for you? And then in addition, so say if you have those things cleared out, you have all those things, right? And you're taking notes of like, is it working? Is it not working? But if you're constantly hitting the reset button, I promise it's because you aren't clear of understanding your values and your rules. All right. Now, I think Court can talk to this one, because this is one that I think we found out majorly for her is, for a lot of you guys out there, for the type of people we tend to attract, you're very A-type personalities, you're very go-getters, you're actionable people. You want to take on and conquer the world and see change in your life. But that also means that we tend to love our independence. We love to be the ones that are behind the captain's chair. We are the ones that love to feel like we can control. All right. And oftentimes we ask is, okay, if I tell you control's an illusion, what is the visceral feeling you feel right when I say that? And if it's like, hold on, Brandon, I can control all kinds of stuff. I'm here to tell you can't. All right. But what you can do is you can create those things. And at the same time frame is, if you're not clear of understanding of like, okay, if your essential value, and this is what, I don't want to speak for you, but essentially this is what we found out with Court, is freedom and independence is very, very high on her essential value totem pole of the things that she wants to experience in her life. And in order for her to, for her own terms, what did you have to do? What did you believe had to happen for you to have independence and freedom?
When it came to food?
No, just when it came to independence or anything.
That it got to be my choice.
What?
Right? Like, I got to make the choice. Again, I'm like, you told me to be at work every morning at 5 a.m. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. We own a gym. I go to work almost every morning at 5 a.m. and I love it. And I have no problem. But if someone told me I had to do that, it wasn't going to work for me. So I had to feel like it was my choice and my decision.
So, given that, right, like independence and freedom. Number one, number two on her hierarchy of values that she wants to experience on a day-to-day basis. And in her words, as she just said, is it has to feel like she's the one making the decision behind that. And if somebody told her, she wouldn't do it. But what we also found is, after doing this and going through programs and getting coaching and doing other things that would, counting macros, doing other programs that required weighing and measuring and doing, intermittent fasting and doing all the other things that have been proven in some capacity to work. And you were seeing the results that you essentially wanted to see, right?
So maybe I've ever said this. It just came to me when you said that. Like, I remember thinking and saying probably, I like the outcome, but I really don't like the process. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I didn't like the process, I had made this choice. I had put myself in a box of rules, right? So it was still my choice, but I had said I'm going to do these things, and I knew that none of them felt like freedom, right? And I remember saying, like, I really like the outcome, but the process is just no fun. And if this is what it's going to take, then I guess I just really don't want it that bad. Like, I remember saying that before we realized what was actually happening, right? And so, do you want to say more about that, or you want to talk about rules and boundaries?
Well, no, I think that leads into it. I think, but it's being able to clarify, okay? Because all the value is essentially it's an emotional feeling that you deem of high importance for you. We have values that we want to move towards, right? For Courts, it's freedom, it's independence. We went over this with our shift group. It's love, it's connection, it's intent, whatever. We all have a different list, and we all have essentially a different hierarchical element of meaning. But we also have a different definition of what has to happen for us to individually meet that. And if you don't understand this, and this doesn't get talked about anywhere, And this is why we constantly feel like we're hitting the reset button, is if you feel like you're having the reset button, even if it's something that you know you want to your core, it's probably because you're having value conflictions.
Yeah. Well, and for me, that was a big thing that I learned, was that, it was rules and boundaries. And I grew up in a household that was pretty rule based and I didn't like them, right? The rules are made to be broken, even though, anyway, that's a whole side note. But so for me, I had created a ton of rules. So if you don't know my story, I was anorexic, I was bulimic and then I had disordered eating for 25 years, right? And so I would create all these rules, right? Why did I create the rules? Because I didn't trust myself, right? Because what I was told is, you got to, this is in the 90s, you guys, you got to eat 1,200 calories, you got to do this much cardio, you have to all of these things. So it's here's all these rules. If this is what I desire, these are all the rules that I have to have, right? So I would give all myself these rules because I didn't trust myself. And then eventually I was like, well, these rules are dumb, right? If you really want to go into probably why I was bulimic, it was because I wanted to eat food and enjoy having dinner with my friends my freshman year of college, but I also didn't want to gain weight. So I was like, well, I can eat the food and then I can throw it up, right? So it was my way of breaking my rules. But so what I realized was had all these rules that made me feel constricted and lack and just bleh, right? And so then I would break them and then I'd be like, well, I guess I just don't trust myself. So what I learned is that you will break rules eventually, always. I don't even care if you're the best rule person ever and you think they feel good for a while, you will eventually break them. So what you can shift to is boundaries. And so boundaries are really cool. And if you like control, you're not gonna like boundaries in the beginning. And I was a control freak and I was like, what do you mean? When my mentor was control's an illusion, I was like, I'm checked out, I'm not listening to this. But when you learn you can create it, you're like, oh, I am really powerful because I can create this. So boundaries are flowy. Boundaries are my intention, right, is to eat 3 times a day and to have protein, carbs, and fat and to work out, 4 or 5 times a week. Those are boundaries, right? They're things that you intend that if I take these intentions and I do them long enough, I'm going to have the outcome I desire. The cool thing about boundaries is if you have a bad day or a day that doesn't go as planned and you're like, man, I only ate 2 times today. Well, you didn't fail because it wasn't a rule. You're like, okay, well, that didn't serve me. What can I do tomorrow that's going to go better? So you can't fail boundaries. And for everyone that's the start and stop people, it's because you have rules and you break the rule and you're like, yeah, I'm done. I can't do it, right? And so boundaries, they're flowy and they feel good. And you're like, okay, well, this should be my boundary, right? And then when things don't go exactly as planned, you're like, cool, what did I learn from that, right? Boundaries allow you to learn and to grow and then to shift, right? And so that's really this biggest thing is if you feel like you need rules, there's deeper issues there of why you don't trust yourself and why you don't believe you trust yourself and all the patterns that have happened that made you not trust yourself or trust the world or whatever. So we need to look at why we desire rules and where that's coming from, but then we need to shift into boundaries. And I know when I went through it, not gonna lie, for the first 2 weeks, I was like, these are just boundaries. They were the same rules. I just put a different label on them. They did not become boundaries. I had to actually let go of all of the rules to create boundaries, which was a really untethering, uneasy feeling. But the outside of that, 2 weeks later, I was like, this is amazing, right? And now it's been 5 years of living without calorie counting and living without rules and just understanding, I get to feel what's going on and have that connection. And when you do that, food is no longer something that takes up all your time and that you think about all the time, right? I mean, I talked to quite a few people. It was how much time do you think you spend thinking about food? And for some people, it's 70-80% of their day. And I can tell you, for me, it was probably 90% of my day. What am I going to eat? What can't I eat? When am I going to eat it? What's going to happen if I do that? What's going to, and then it was determining all the feelings I had. I don't know how I got anything done. We were running 3 businesses and had 2 kids. And I'm like, how on earth did I do anything? So if you find yourself in this place of trying to stay motivated and thinking about food all the time, you need to allow yourself to look at, what would it feel like to be free of those thoughts, free of that addiction, not addiction, but to some degree it was an addiction, but free of that desire to need to control all of the things. And how would it feel to be the creator, right? And I know when we started this program, I had a couple one-on-one clients that did this program, and one of them said, how do you become the creator? And it was like, Courtney, that sounds amazing, but how? And I was like, stick with us. It's a choice, right? But first you have to let go of control. But when you become the creator of your destiny, it just becomes this beautiful story where you get to create the life you desire and the body you desire and the health you desire because you desire it. So That's my little rules and boundaries. I'm a little passionate about this.
So, I mean, the big takeaway in this, you guys, is that, yet again, if you've been part of this group long enough, you can kind of see that there's always another level to the thing in which we think it is, right? And that ties into what we'll get into next on the nutritional piece of this. But it's usually, and the reason why we tackle so much of this, you guys, and the reason why the 8-week shift works so well, and the reason why it's a coach program, is because what we've found to be true, and I don't care whether it's with your physical ability, when it comes to a relationship, when it comes to owning a business, being a teacher, whatever it may be, success in any realm is 80% mental, emotional, and psychological. And for most of us, what we think is because what most of us get sold is, oh, here's the how of the magic unicorn thing that's going to solve all your problems. Well, yet again, it's usually not that simple, but marketing makes things really, really complex and really, really simple, because if they told you and essentially made things that simple and accessible, there'd be nothing to sell.
And you wouldn't believe it.
And you wouldn't believe it, right? Because it's got to be way more complex. But really all it is usually we have our subconscious, we have our own things, that are standing in our own way. And our job is to help you eliminate those and basically get out of your own way and see that you can be the creator in your life. But most of the times I don't have the belief because I haven't shown myself I can do it before. You probably have, you just yet again are focusing on the wrong thing. All right, so when it comes to motivation, when it comes to self-sabotage, when it comes to these things, you guys, it's not the rah-rah speech. It's not the getting up and feeling like you need to go run in the rain and do all those things. Can they be beneficial? Yes, and if that speaks to you, go do it right now after you finish listening to this. But at the same time, friendly, you guys, is being able to have clear and concise, so you're not having to live with the story and regret. Because I know for myself, at the end, like my biggest thing that I want to move away from as far as the value is regret in my life. And so if we can create those things of understanding, we can move away from that a lot easier. All right. Add another question regarding essential protein intake. It comes from, I think, Sandra. I believe it's Sandra that was talking about she eats a lot of Mexican type of foods and tends to be very high in the carbohydrate category and tends to struggle a lot with protein. All right. Now, I think not only on a cultural standpoint, but yet again, she lives in America, which we tend to fall into that realm anyway of being very carb heavy, very low protein. Despite what we get yet again sold that Americans eat nothing but protein, but based on the data that's shown, we don't eat a lot of protein. All right, we eat a lot of processed stuffs and a lot of carb heavy stuffs, even a lot of fat heavy stuff that gets a lot of bang for our buck when it comes to essentially a caloric standpoint. All right, now when it comes to protein, you tend to obviously be a little bit more sensitive on certain things when it comes to protein, right? And so I guess for those that struggle with protein, where would you give them the first thing that they could implement? Maybe not even a source, but what's the first thing that they could?
So, I mean, to me, it's coming up with, like, what are those boundaries, right? Of, like, okay, well, how many times do you desire to eat a day? And then just making sure that you start with protein. And we do this we have this conversation with our children every single day. And they're 6 and 8. We're like, what's a protein? What's a protein? What's a protein? Why do you need it? Why do you need it? Why do you need it? Like every day until they get it. But it's like, for me, it's like, well, start off with the protein, right? Start off with things that you like. Like that goes back to everything we talk about, right? Like if you hate the food and if you feel like I don't eat a lot of chicken because for all those years that I was dieting, I had like, I'm not good at cooking chicken, it appears. So I had like dry chicken breast and I was like, I don't want to eat chicken, right? So find out what you like, make it simple and make it like, I think the hardest thing with protein is people think it takes a long time to cook it, right? So, I mean, our go-to is literally like, we have like kitchen scissors and I cut up some chicken and I throw it in a pan with some coconut oil and I don't like seasoning, so I don't put any seasoning on it. It takes 5 minutes to cook it, right? But it's like, if you can start with the idea of whatever you struggle the most to get in, eat that first, right? Let that be the deciding factor. And I do that, right? It's like, for me, vegetables are the hardest thing. So I start with what vegetable am I going to have? What protein am I going to have? And then I'll add, the carbohydrate and the fat at the end because those two are easy for me. So it's like, find simple things, right? Eggs, chicken, steak, hamburger, right? And I feel like on if we're talking about sort of Mexican food, like we've been having tacos a ton, but we take lean ground beef, we do, healthier tortillas. And there's no reason that you can't do that, but you got to make sure that like when you're making your taco, that it's not like 4 tortillas and a bunch of cheese and nothing else, right? And so really it's like start with the end in mind. If you know that you're having a harder time with this, how can you branch out? Where can you kind of get that in, and just make sure that's a stable hold of those 3 meals, and you'll be fine, right? There are, again, you can do shakes and you can do that kind of stuff, and every now and then, like there's Quest tortilla chips that I'll eat every now and then because they taste really good, but they mess with my stomach, right? So there are ways, but just think about what are the whole foods you can go to and get it in at every meal, and you're going to really find a lot more balance.
Well, I think that's the key right there. Is it has to be yet again, if you're not familiar with our stance is food first, whole real food first. Because most people hear like, oh, I struggle with getting protein. Well, add in a shake. Yet again, you guys, we're gonna get into more of like the things that are really affecting your metabolism here in a second, but if supplementation isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if it is the first go-to that you have when essentially you're acknowledging like, hey, I struggle with getting protein in, but I eat 3 times a day. Okay, you acknowledge, so that's a known thing now that you know that you struggle with. Add another serving into that. Start with that, right? Like allow yourself to, yet again, think ahead of time of what you're going to eat. And it might take some process. It might take a little bit of a process of practicing these things a little bit. But okay, because we see this all the time. We saw this with the group that just went through of like, well, how do I make what I'm currently doing work for what the plan is supposed to be? Well, if you're doing what you are currently doing, you are getting the results you're currently getting because of what you're doing. So in order for you to get different results, you have to do something different, right? And so it's acknowledging it. It's awareness, curiosity, seeing what's coming in and see what's going out, and then making adjustments, right? Like especially if you love Mexican type of dishes, okay, yes, those tend to be more carbohydrate rich typically, but there's a vast array of alterations that you can do to shift that nutrient breakdown of that down, right? And so it's being able to, yet again, front load. We were talking about front loading the things in which you tend to maybe not get enough of or maybe tend to avoid, and then put the other stuff that you really enjoy on the back end of it.
And be intentional about it, right? Like when you create your meals, be intentional. And again, like we're all about intentional eating. Like what's your intention? Or is your intention that you need to get more protein? Sometimes your intention is like, it's Saturday night, I'm going to go enjoy some dessert. Cool, that's an intention. But you got to know why you're doing what you're doing and have an intention for it and be okay with all the different intentions, right? It doesn't always have to be food, just fuel. Like that's not always true either. But front load it, decide what you like, have some stuff cooked. We buy kind of those like chomps, like meat sticks, right? So that they're easy to grab and go. Because a lot of times it's just we don't have time or we don't think we have time to cook it. Have stuff that's easily grabbable, and then just take those with you.
All right. So with that, you guys, going to try to go through this. We're not going to get through everything. We're short on time. Imagine that. But essentially to kind of help you guys lay out of understanding, because so many of you, and like Courtney's had conversations like crazy this week. So many of us feeling like I'm doing the right thing. I overheard several conversations like I've done my macros for the last 2 years and I haven't changed a thing. But for whatever reason, in the last 2 years, all of a sudden my weight has gone up 10 to 20 pounds.
And then got back down.
And then got so it's that roller coaster ride that's going on. And it's on the sense of, for most of us, we're going to talk why these things are so important is because they don't get talked about, right? And I can take it from my side of things. When I was going through my school and going through my essentially bachelor's program and everything else, it was the number one thing that controlled all weight loss and metabolism was calories. Calorie in, calorie out, right? And for so many of you guys, because we've had conversations with you of like, I eat this specific number of calories. I track them. I do everything. I see how many calories I burn in my workout. I do all these things. Why the hell am I not losing weight, or why am I even gaining weight? Well, I think I'm going to have to do this in a separate portion, but I'll go through some of the big ones we have. There's at least 8 that are major factors of this, but we'll get through maybe a couple for today, okay? So the big one on there, you guys, is inflammation, okay? So think of this as it's not a hierarchy. They all contribute and everything works together, but essentially think of the first one is inflammation, all right? Now, what we look at inflammation in its own sense is, it's getting a lot more notoriety, but inflammation is like, oh, it's this bad, really, really bad thing. We don't want, like, inflammation is there as your body's signal. Like, we need inflammation to send a signal to your body of like, hey, something's wrong. We need to fix the issue at hand. But when we're in chronic inflammation, that's when it's a big issue. That's when the system is in constant influx. It's not able to work. It's not able to essentially adapt and address the things in which it should be utilized in other areas. It's the same thing like when we have a disease and my immune system is busy fighting off other things, and all of a sudden something else walks in the door. If my army over here is already fighting the battle over here and something walks in the door, that's essentially my system not able to handle the problems it's designed to do. And so that's the same thing that happens on a metabolic rate or on a metabolic basis, is because it literally affects what the internal environment of your system is. Okay, so when we're talking about inflammation, especially inflammation of the gut, all right, and this is why it's not just the calories in which you eat. It's how those things in the foods that you eat, the environment, the things you drink, all those things, how that affects your own individual system. Okay, because Courtney's system is different than my system. My system's different than yours. You literally have a thumbprint and a fingerprint internally inside you that is based off of how you were born, the things you were around, your stress, your sleep, the things you drink, the whatever you were exposed to growing up. Like, all those things literally are going to comprise what's your internal environment. All right. Now, if we have a lot of non-ideal foods, we're dealing with a lot of stress, we're dealing with a lot of toxifications, we're dealing with a lot of things that's going to influence your internal makeup of what your essential system is. In addition, what we're also seeing, in addition to essentially high inflammatory elements of the gut, is we're also seeing trickles of that affect your liver. All right, now yet again, the system works together. All right, when we're talking about calories, we always put them in a box, right? Or they're good or they're bad. It doesn't work like that. The system works as a whole, all right? And so for your body and your liver to be able to essentially detox, because that's essentially the biggest detoxification organ there is your liver massively affects your metabolism, because it also massively, for one, it detoxifies and essentially sends the information, but it also essentially affects your thyroid. All right. Now, your thyroid is basically the master portion of that controls your metabolic function. All right. So there's a lot of thyroid hormone function. There's a lot of thyroid just affection or influence based off of what's going on. And so what we see there is oftentimes what's deemed as non-alcoholic fatty syndrome. Okay, syndrome. I think it's syndrome. But essentially is your liver starts to take on the same attributes as if you were an alcoholic, right? Like, we get fatty liver. And so it messes up essentially the messenger carriers. And this is why when it comes to gut inflammation and liver inflammation, is because at the end of the day, and the people going through our shift program of understanding that your hormonal balance is really the key that we're trying to do and promote. And what your hormones are is essentially those are the messenger carriers and the messenger receivers of what gets turned on and what gets turned off. So I can eat all the specific calories I want, but if the things that are behind the wheel of what turns on and what turns off is in influx, it doesn't matter. All right, so that's why we need to utilize a system that we've seen work really, really well to get the hormonal basis back on track, to get your body working for you, not against you.
Yeah. Hey, Tiffany, how are you? That was a lot, right? So if you guys are like, what did he just say? Okay, take a second, watch it again. But I think the biggest thing as we go through some of this sciencey stuff, you guys, is to understand a lot of what you've been sold forever is wrong, right? Like, just do this, just do that, go keto, go carnivore, go, like, your body is a very, very impressive, cool system. But if you don't know where the disconnects are, you can't fix that system. And that's why you're frustrated, right? It's not your fault. It's not, because this stuff is not sexy. Like, a lot of you might have gone like, what the heck is he talking about?
No, because this was what I was taught. My thousands of dollars gone into educational system that was taught. It's just your calories. It's just your calories. It's just your calories. And I mean, you hop on any other TikTok, YouTube, whatever other stuff that the kids are on nowadays. Every guru out there is just preaching it's all about your calorie control and your calorie restriction. They do play a role. But if the system that drives and controls what happens with those calories is jacked up, you can count your calories till you're blue in your face. You're not going to get the results you want.
Yeah, and if you're globally inflamed and your gut's unhappy, guess what else that affects? Your mood, your motivation, your sleep, your stress, right? Again, you guys, they all
It's all connected.
So it's like you gotta like start to see like, wow, if something is missing, what could that missing piece be, right? And like Brandon said, he's got 8 of them, so we're gonna go over a couple of them. But just take a second and say to yourself right now, this might not be my fault. There's probably other things happening in my system, and wouldn't it be cool if I could figure out what those things are? And please don't go to your doctor and ask them to talk to you about nutrition. That's a total side note. They're not gonna they're gonna test your things and tell you you're fine. Like it's figuring out for yourself and having a process to understand what's actually happening in your body, and then looking at how do we systematically fix it, right? Food can be an amazing, beautiful healer.
Okay, just to clarify, we're not telling you not to go to your doctor. Just see that one getting thrown out there. We're not telling you not to go to your doctor, but just as from our experience is most doctors, depending on what school they came from, they get 1 to 2 weeks of nutritional schooling, like tops. All right. And the reason why we know this because we've had a lot of doctor friends that mean well and they're very, very precise on the education in which they get. But when it comes to preventative measures and those kind of things, our system doesn't tend to promote those things very well. All right. So we're not telling you not to do that.
Hi, Phyllis.
All right. The next one corresponds with that. Okay. And that's neural inflammation. Okay. And so essentially that's inflammation of your brain. All right. Now, how that works is when we have inflammation of the gut, that's also connected to inflammation of the brain because your brain and your gut is connected via the gut-brain axis. All right. That's your gut is known as your second brain because it has literally neurons, the same thing as you have in your brain to like memorize and create functions. You have those same things inside your gut. But there's the vagus nerve that runs from your gut to your up to your brain, literally connects those two things. And so when we have inflammation of the gut, oftentimes that also means we have inflammation of the brain. Now, what that affects is essentially your hypothalamus. All right. Now, your hypothalamus is also known essentially as the master gland. All right. Now, why that's important and why we do what we do in Shift is because we want to connect all the systems. Is because your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland, it's also known as the HPA axis. Okay, so it's your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, your adrenal, and your thyroid function. All those are going to affect your metabolism, all right? And I know for all you guys, you're craving to want to know how to affect and increase your metabolism. But if your external environment, and I don't know many of you guys that haven't been in a essential elevated state over the last 2 years because what we've essentially had to live and work through is our external environment is in influx. And in turn, the hypothalamus connects your external and your internal environment. Okay, so if my external environment is in disarray, my internal environment is also going to be in disarray because that's what I'm perceiving. It's not just woo-woo. This is actually how your body works. All right, and so it's being able to understand that if we can create an essential awareness around these things, and first off, be able to develop to be that person that under any circumstance you can flow and be okay and direct the path and everything else, not where it has to be perfect, but you get to be the dictator and the creator of your life and understand that life is happening for you, not to you. This is where we can take that external and also create the internal. But if we can also get ourselves out of eating a lot of processed foods, we're seeing a lot of so your brain is only about 2% of your total body weight, but it consumes upwards of 20 to 25% of the calories and essentially the nutrients in which you ingest. Okay, so it takes up a lot of energy. And so when we're eating a lot of high sugar, because we see a massive amount of that, of eating a lot of additional sugars into our diet, that goes right across the blood-brain barrier. And so that automatically causes influence of inflammation of the brain, bad neurology, is yet again, your depression, sadness, sleep issues, all those things, the brain fog, all those things collaborate and happen together because of this. So yet again, this will also affect your metabolic function.
Right. And again, you guys, what he just said, External affects the internal affects the external, emotional affects your function, right? Like, again, they all go together, right? You like, and again, it's like, can we expand our understanding to go, okay, I can't just focus on one thing. When I just focus on that one thing, all of the other things could be in disarray, right? And so I just really want to get you guys to understand everything you think, do, and feel affects exactly how your body physically shows up as well.
Okay, so I think we're going to do one just because we're running out of time here. I think we're going to do one more. But essentially on this, you guys, it's the types of food also influences essentially what your body does with those calories and nutrients, right? Because yet again, if you're landlocked into just either we see this a lot with obviously calorie counting, because that just gives you basically this number that doesn't attach anything of knowing what else that's coming in through the door. But we also see this oftentimes with macro programs of essentially, if it fits your macros, go eat it. As long as you fit into this X amount of carbs, this X amount of protein, and this X amount of fat, you're good to go. But then we've had, again, she's spoken to quite a few people this week that have been doing macro programs that aren't seeing the results they want, because it's not even just essentially what the macros you're following either. Okay, so just to kind of highlight that, is there was a research article published in the Food and Nutrition Journal that essentially took two groups. Okay, so researchers took two groups. One group was going to eat whole food, okay, a meal of whole food, and another group that was going to eat a meal of processed foods. The calories and the macros were essentially identical. All right, but the whole food group, what they ate was literally a multi-grain bread and real cheese. All right, so essentially Kraft cheese, or not, it wasn't Kraft cheese, it was cheddar cheese, okay? And the processed group ate essentially a similar sandwich, but it was made with white bread and cheese product. Yes, cheese product. So essentially, what is cheese product? It's Kraft cheese.
No, it's
all right?
like the American cheese slices. It don't look like cheese.
So essentially, there's not enough cheese in that product that they can't call it cheese. So it's cheese product. Okay, and what they found is after the groups ate their meal, yet again, the calories were the same, the macronutrient was the same, it was just the type of food that they consumed. The group that ate the processed sandwich after eating that, burned up to 50% less calories after that meal. I'll say that again. The group that ate the processed sandwich, even though the calories were the same, even though the macronutrients were the same, that group burnt up to 50% less calories after eating that meal. So essentially, their hormonal response in that they call it hormonal clog. Right? Hormonal clog. And so essentially the hormones didn't know how to associate and what to distribute and what to get essentially how to interpret that meal. And so yet again, if the interpreters of the meal don't know what to do with it, they can't absorb, they can't send the nutrients, they can't open up the pathways that you want to essentially open up for you to burn and lose the fat. So essentially, what you eat is important. But the amount you eat and what you eat is important, okay? It's not just one or the other. They have to coincide and work together, all right?
And I think that's a really good thing about like quality versus quantity, right? Again, yes, we need to have the better quality, but like if you think about that, you're like, why is processed food so bad? Well, if your metabolism slowed down 50% because your body didn't know what to do with it because it doesn't see it as food, that's a really big problem, right? Like that's a huge problem. And I think one of the things we see with society in general right now is people are overfed and undernourished, right? And so if you're eating, like Brandon said, all those processed foods, like you might be getting the right calories, but you're still undernourished. And if you're undernourished, there's all these other things that go awry, which he just talked about, because you're not actually getting the nourishment that your body can do something with it to take you into the path that you want to go.
So, I want to clarify on that too, is on the sense, because usually what people hear is like, oh, so you're saying those foods are bad. No, that's not our message at all. That's not our belief. Our belief is food should be inclusive. Mm-hmm. But what we want to be able to do is come from, yet again, an intentional place of understanding and using the information that we have to our own resources and to our own advantage. We can absolutely still incorporate those things. You love Kraft cheese? Have Kraft cheese. You want to have a white bread? Have white bread. But also put it in the stance where, we want to be able to promote 80 to 80+% of our nourishment be whole real foods, right? Like if you want to still incorporate those things, absolutely still incorporate them. But right now, I would imagine if you're in that boat, they might be in the opposite realm of that, right? And so usually the simplest measure of that is start eating more real food, and you automatically start to see a better return on what you are getting. Yep. Right. And so, really, like that's why it's so simple, is because really we're not doing anything that's absurdly outlandish. We're just shifting the nutrient and shifting kind of the emphasis of what we're doing, and it works.
Yeah. And again, understanding why, understanding that like all of this stuff is actually happening in the background and it has nothing to do with just the calories. So awesome, honey. All right, you guys. So that is what we've got for you today. Thank you guys for joining us. So a couple things, if you find value in this, please comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your criticism, your concern, your praise, all of the things. Also share this with your friends. If you're finding value out of this group or out of this video, invite your friends to this group. Again, our mission really is to spread this, to help people, get the health that they desire and really bust the myth and get everyone off of dieting and into a place of just growth and health and wellness. So, so go invite your friends. Take a look at the shift program. Even if you're like, I don't know, these guys are kind of crazy, I don't want to do this. Like, go look at it, see if it makes sense to you, see what questions come up. If you're intrigued by it, but you've got some questions, reach out. We're happy to answer them. You can reach out to myself, to Brandon, to Jen, to any of our shifters, right? They're all open to share their experience, and they're probably better spokespeople than we are because they just lived it and they know how much their lives have changed from 7.5 weeks ago to now. And that's the other part, you guys. Have some faith that like if you do something different, that your life and the way that you feel about food and your body and your emotional and your mental health, like all of that can be drastically different in less than 2 months, right? That might sound too good to be true, but it really can happen, and stay in a place where it's going to continue to shift. And it's not this like I did this challenge, where this is not a challenge. Like I did a challenge and then it ended and I went back to what I was doing. So we appreciate you guys. If you have any questions watching the replay, drop those questions. Again, we'd love to hear your feedback, and we appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, guys, have a great day.